Well, so Grindr itself now is 7 years old, and I really do think that the origins of Grindr for Equality go back to the very beginning. Like, it's clear to me that even though Joel and the team that he assembled was really envisioning an app in which, gay and bi men connect to one another, they saw really early on the potential for using it for social justice too. So Grindr for Equality has two goals: to create a healthy community of Grindr users and to create a politically engaged community of Grindr users, both in reference to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer issues, and also, I think, more broadly, depending on where we're talking about. How do we define a healthy Grindr user? Stopping the epidemic is obviously a huge priority for LGBT activists broadly. And because we're working in 197 countries across the world, there are places where, everyone is impacted by HIV in one way or another, and there are places where the epidemic is less strong. In terms of HIV issues in Grindr, is to make sure that people have accurate and updated information, that they know where they can get an HIV test, and that if they are living in a place where they have access to other tactics like PrEP, that they know about that and that they can access it. So PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis, and it's really an umbrella term that refers to any medication that you might be taking to prevent HIV. And right now, at least in the United States, the only FDA-approved drug that falls under that protocol is called Truvada. And a lot of times people use those two terms interchangeably, but eventually we will have other drugs that also fall under the PrEP umbrella. Basically, if you take it every day, it means that your body won't host the virus. It's the most prescribed drug in an HIV-positive person's cocktail globally. So they basically just found a new use for it, which is that if you take it ahead of time, it has this other impact. So in terms of where PrEP is available around the world, there are really two classes of countries. One is where it's approved for prophylactic use, and that includes places like, obviously, the United States, Canada, Peru, France, South Africa, Kenya, Israel. And then there's this other group of countries where people have access to the drug itself, but mostly it's because PrEP or Truvada has been approved for use by HIV-positive people to suppress the virus, not to be used by HIV-negative people to keep from getting it. And the challenge for that is that on the one hand, I feel great about people taking control of their health, being empowered, and using drugs in ways that we know they work. And on the other hand, it would be more ideal in some ways to be working with a primary care doctor who can monitor your kidney functions and give you STI tests and HIV tests once every 3 months like we do in places like the United States. So we really talked about PrEP internationally and the situation that it can create for people who are in countries where they might not have a doctor that they can come out to, but they can get access to Truvada. And the situation is really different in the United States. And for the year 2016, we really took PrEP as a priority for our U.S. health work. And the reason why we did that, so about midway through 2015, we did a big survey of our U.S. users that asked a couple of things. So, are you on PrEP now? If not, do you want to be? Are you interested? And how much do you know about it? And what are your attitudes towards it? And we got this whole sort of boatload of information about where people are at with PrEP. And of course, where they were a year ago is very different than where we are now. But what we learned was essentially that people just didn't know. They either didn't know about it at all, and we're hearing about PrEP for the first time on this survey, or it was something that they had sort of heard in their social group, online, but hadn't really looked very, very deeply into it. When I got that data back, I thought, this is one of the most powerful tools we've ever had to fight against the HIV epidemic, and people have no idea. And Grindr is in a unique position to talk to such a huge majority of LGBT people, or at least of gay and bi men and some trans people in the United States about this issue, that we absolutely have to be doing it. So we committed to 2 in-app messages a week at a minimum for the year of 2016 that dealt specifically with PrEP and would be done, entirely for free as we were collaborating with individual organizations. And really, just to give you a tiny bit of background on the in-app message system, this is one of the most powerful tools that I have in my toolbox. So when you open the app, for anyone who's never been on it, depending on where you are, at any time that you open it, you'll get between 0 and 3 pop-ups. And many of these are paid advertisements, but some of them are from me and from Grindr for Equality, and maybe talking about health or politics. And those are all geolocated to where you are, and they can also be tailored based on a number of demographic issues that you fill out with your profile if you choose to. So they may be race specific, they may be age specific, and they might relate to another community that you are in, like being trans. What that creates is just a situation in which we can create very tailored messaging depending on who you are that addresses your needs. So as we were thinking about how do we tackle PrEP at the national level, we basically took the map and took these demographic categories and cut it up and created this sort of patchwork system in which people would get these really tailored messages. For example, there's an HIV service organization based in Maine who we partner with, and we do all the Maine messaging through them. And it says, where in Maine can I go? What number do I call to get information that's specific to my town in Maine? For the race-specific stuff, the data really spoke volumes about how race and PrEP issues intersected. So, for example, Latinos were 10% less likely than any other racial cohort to already be on PrEP, and Black folks were twice as likely as any other racial category to have been denied PrEP when they asked their doctor for it, both of which are extremely startling statistics. And I think that, as you do this kind of work, that the way that these things play out across racial groups in the U.S. is going to be startling, and it still doesn't necessarily prepare you to see that. I think that there is an opportunity for technology to help folks who are in this position of wanting to use Truvada prophylactically, but not necessarily having a doctor to work closely with. Part of the challenge is just having all the information. For example, what tests would a primary care doctor run on me and how often? Even if you aren't in a position to come out to your doctor, or even if you don't have a doctor who you work with regularly, if you know that and can go to the lab and request those tests yourself, it does give you more of an ability to take control of your health in that way. When I think about the potential for Hack4Equality, it feels like it's born out of the same connections that I make between organizations in different countries, in that I hope to tap into the expertise and potential of kind of a new group of people who my activist friends are not currently working with. And I tell the story of, suddenly I'm at a tech company, I'm talking to a number of organizations, and, to a person, people will say, yes, using cutting edge technology is so important to us. And then inevitably follow it up with some absurd statement like, that's why we've set up a Twitter account. Which is great, and I think it's fantastic, and I for sure am right there with them. And, we don't have access to cutting-edge technology. And I think that being at Grindr, I have such a tremendous opportunity to bridge that gap. Come to hack4equality.com and check out what we're doing to create cutting-edge technologies for LGBT advocacy all over the world.